The desperate plea. The night was cold, sharper than any winter the farmer had felt in years. The wind howled through the empty fields, rattling the wooden fences, and carrying the sound of loneliness across the land. Inside his small house, the fire burned low, its crackling the only comfort in the silence. The man, a simple farmer, had almost drifted to sleep when he heard it. A knock, soft at first, then a second. Desperate, he frowned, pulling on his coat, wondering who could be out at such an hour. Few dared to travel the roads at night, fewer still to knock on his door. When he opened it, the cold rushed in, but so did something else. A figure stood trembling, wrapped in torn cloth, her skin pale with an otherworldly glow. Behind her, two smaller shapes shivered, their eyes wide, their tiny arms clutching her legs. For a moment, the farmer's breath caught. Aliens. He had seen them only from a distance, hated and feared by most of his kind. They were outcasts, strangers in a land that did not want them. And yet here, one stood on his doorstep, weak and shaking, holding her children close. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Please," she whispered, her words heavy with shame. "If I warm your bed, will you let us remain?" The farmer froze, shocked at the plea. The children's eyes glistened with hunger and fear, and the woman's trembling lips betrayed how much it cost her to say such words. She was not begging for herself. She was bargaining with her dignity for her children's lives. The farmer's chest tightened. He looked past her at the road, dark and empty. No one followed. No patrols. No villagers yet. But dawn would bring eyes, and eyes would bring judgment if anyone saw them here. The punishment would be swift and brutal. Harboring aliens was not kindness. It was betrayal to the laws of men. But could he turn them away? The farmer remembered winters past, when hunger had clawed at his own belly. He remembered his wife, long gone, who used to leave bread on the windowsill for stray children. Her voice echoed in his memory, soft but firm. "No one should be left to die in the cold," she had said. The farmer's jaw tightened. The alien mother's knees buckled, and she sank to the ground, clutching her little ones. Her pride was already broken, but her eyes still burned with a quiet fire, the fire of a mother's love. She was ready to sacrifice everything, even her honor, to see her children live one more day. Her body shivered in the cold, her skin catching the moonlight. But it was not her alienness the farmer saw. It was her desperation. For a long moment, he stood silent, his hand gripping the door frame. The fire behind him flickered, warm and safe, while outside, the wind cut like knives. The choice was clear, and yet it was not. He could close the door and sleep in peace, or he could open his life to danger, risk the wrath of his own people, and protect those who had no one else. The woman lifted her head, her lips trembling. "We have nowhere else," she whispered. "They will not let us stay. They chase us. They hate us. But if you allow us one night, if I must give myself so they may rest, I will." Her children clung tighter, their small eyes staring into the farmer's heart. Their breath rose in small clouds, fading quickly into the night air. The farmer's throat went dry. He stepped aside, his voice rough, almost a growl. "Get in!" Her eyes widened, as if she had not expected kindness. Slowly she rose, gathering her children into her arms, stepping into the small house with hesitant feet. The warmth of the fire touched her skin, and her children let out small gasps, clutching each other as the frost left their bodies. The farmer closed the door firmly, shutting out the bitter wind. He turned toward her, his face hard, but his eyes heavy with something he could not name. "You will not warm my bed," he said quietly. "Not for a roof, not for bread, not for anything." The woman's lips parted, but no sound came. She lowered her head, tears welling at the corners of her strange, luminous eyes. Her children pressed against her, their tiny forms already softening in the warmth. The farmer stoked the fire, throwing in another log. The crackle filled the silence. "You and your children will sleep near the fire tonight," he said, his back to them. "It is not much, but it is safe." For the first time in many days, the alien mother let herself breathe. Her shoulders shook as silent tears fell, not of shame now, but of fragile relief. And though the farmer did not turn, though he kept his face set and stern, he felt something shift in the room, something quiet, but undeniable. This was not the night he had expected, and somehow, he knew, it was the night everything began to change. The farmer's dilemma. The fire burned low in the small house. The alien mother sat close to it. Her children huddled against her sides, their thin bodies slowly relaxing in the warmth. The farmer stood a few steps away, leaning against the wooden wall, his arms folded tight across his chest. His mind was not at rest, even as the room seemed quiet. The real storm was inside him. He had taken them in, yes, but he knew what it meant. If the neighbors found out, if the patrols saw even a glimpse of alien tracks near his land, he would be marked as a traitor. Harboring strangers from the stars was a crime, punishable by exile or worse. And yet, as he watched the children's eyelids grow heavy with sleep, he could not force himself to regret it. His heart ached with memories he had buried long ago. The farmer remembered the nights when his wife still lived. She had been gentle, kinder than anyone in the village. Once, they had found a wounded bird outside, and while he had thought it useless to save, she had stayed awake through the night nursing it until it flew again. She used to say that kindness was never wasted, even if no one else could see it. Now, her voice haunted him as he stared at the alien mother, the woman's eyes lifted toward him, cautious and searching. Her voice was soft, heavy with gratitude and shame. "You could have turned us away," she said. "Why didn't you?" The farmer clenched his jaw, looking at the fire instead of her. "Because I couldn't," he muttered. It was not a grand answer, but it was the truth. Still, doubt gnawed at him. What if the village came searching? What if someone had already seen her on the road? His farm was quiet, yes, but not hidden from the eyes of men who loved to whisper and judge. The thought of torches at his door, angry voices shouting, "Traitor," sent a cold shiver down his back. The alien mother lowered her gaze, her long fingers brushing the hair of her smallest child. "We do not want trouble," she whispered. "We only want to live, to remain, even if it is just in the shadows." Her words struck him like a blade. To her, survival itself had become a bargain. Life reduced to hiding and begging. The farmer shifted, uneasy. He poured water into a tin cup, setting it near her. "You'll drink," he said gruffly, "and they'll eat in the morning." Her eyes flickered with surprise, and for the first time, a faint glimmer of hope softened her tired face. But his mind was still trapped in a war of choices. Kindness on one side, danger on the other. He thought of the villagers, men like Brogan, who carried axes, not just for wood, but for threats they imagined. He thought of the preacher, who shouted from the steps of the hall that aliens were curses upon the earth. And he thought of the patrolmen, armored and cold, who never asked questions before punishment. If they discovered the truth, it would not matter that the children were starving. It would not matter that the mother was desperate. He would be branded a traitor. But as he turned his gaze once more to the fire, he saw the smallest child stir in his sleep. The little one's hands clutched the edge of his mother's torn cloth, his lips mumbling softly in dreams. There was innocence there, untouched by the hatred of men. The farmer felt something twist deep inside him, a reminder that there had been a time when he himself had dreamed without fear, a time before bitterness, before loneliness. The dilemma pressed harder. He could end it tonight, send them back into the cold, close his door and protect his own life. Or he could choose to keep them here, to risk everything for beings that were not his kind. It was a choice no law would forgive, no neighbor would understand. But it was a choice his heart had already made, even if his mind still resisted. The alien mother must have seen the struggle in his face, for she whispered again, her voice trembling. "I will not shame you further," she said. "If you wish us gone, we will leave at dawn, and if the cold takes us, so be it." Her words cut him sharper than any blade. He turned his eyes to hers then, really seeing her exhaustion, her courage, her love carved into every line of her face. She was not weak, not pitiful. She was a survivor. The farmer straightened, his voice firm though quiet. "You'll stay," he said. "Not because of bargains, not because of shame, but because no one, human or alien, deserves to watch their children freeze." Her eyes filled with tears, but she bowed her head, silent. The farmer returned to the wall. Leaning against it, his decision was made, but his heart still raced. The night stretched long ahead, filled with questions and dangers he could not yet answer, but deep inside, as the fire crackled and the children slept peacefully for the first time in many nights, he knew one thing for certain. This night had already bound their fates together, and whether for salvation or ruin, there would be no turning back. The hidden past. The night grew quiet, but sleep did not come easily to the farmer. He sat by the window, watching the cold moonlight stretch across the fields, his hand resting on the old rifle by his chair. The alien mother slept lightly, her children curled against her, as if afraid the warmth might vanish if they let go. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of the wind, made the farmer's ears sharpen. Danger was always close, even in silence. At last, when the fire had burned down to glowing embers, the mother stirred. Her eyes opened, reflecting the dim red light, and she noticed the farmer still awake. Quietly she rose, careful not to wake the little ones. She stepped toward him, her shadow long in the moonlight. "You do not trust me yet," she said softly, her voice almost like the sigh of the wind. The farmer kept his gaze outside. "Trust isn't something handed out," he muttered. "It's earned, and I don't even know your name." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the crack of the wood shifting in the fire. Then she answered, "My name is Syrah." The sound of it lingered in the room, strange yet gentle. A name from another world, a name heavy with sorrow. The farmer finally looked at her, his eyes sharp. "What are you running from, Syrah?" he asked. Her breath caught, and for a moment she seemed ready to turn away. But then she looked back at her children, their faces soft in sleep, and something inside her broke. She sat on the floor across from him, her voice low, trembling. "You deserve to know," she whispered. Her story began slowly, like a wound reopening. She told him of her world, once green, once filled with voices and laughter. But the war came, not started by her people, but forced upon them. Armies from the stars, humans among them, had brought fire and chains. They did not see families, only enemies. They did not see mothers, only intruders to be erased. Her voice cracked as she described the night of the burning. Their village had been torn apart, metal ships blotting out the skies, soldiers marching with weapons that screamed fire and thunder. Her husband had stood with the others, trying to hold the line, but he never returned. The young were taken, the old were cut down, and those who fled had to choose between the forests and the cold void of the stars. Syrah clutched her knees as she spoke. "I ran with the children," she said. "I thought we were safe on this world, hidden among humans. But I was wrong." Her eyes burned with a quiet fury. "Here too, they hunt us. Not soldiers, but neighbors, strangers, and anyone who fears what they do not understand." She told him of nights when she begged for food and was struck instead, of doors that closed when she asked for shelter, of stones thrown at her children, of whispers that grew into shouts. Her words cut through the farmer like cold iron. For a long moment, he said nothing. He stared at the rifle near his hand, then at the fragile shapes of the sleeping children. Their thin faces told him she did not lie. The scars on her arms told him she had paid dearly for every step she had taken to survive. and the fire in her eyes told him she would never stop protecting them. No matter the cost, you came to the wrong place, the farmer said at last, his voice low. This land doesn't forgive strangers, especially not your kind. Syrah's head bowed, her voice a whisper. I know, but I had no choice. This is the last place left to us. If we are driven out again, we will not survive. The farmer studied her, his mind torn again between pity and fear. Every word she spoke tied his fate closer to hers, whether he wanted it or not. Syrah leaned forward, her voice steadier now. I will work your land. I will mend your house. I will do whatever you ask, she said. But let the children remain, even if it means I must sleep in the fields. Her words struck him harder than any plea. She was not begging for herself. She was bargaining with her own pride, ready to be cast aside if it meant her little ones lived. The farmer's throat tightened. He remembered the faces of villagers who once asked for his help and then betrayed him. He remembered how alone he had felt since his wife's passing, and now, in front of him, was a mother who carried the weight of an entire broken world. He felt the heavy pull of destiny pressing on him, as if this choice was bigger than his farm, bigger than his fear. At last he spoke, his voice rough but certain. You'll stay, he said again. Not as shadows, not as beggars, but as people. Syrah's breath trembled, tears shining in her strange eyes. Then everything changes tonight, she whispered. And deep inside, the farmer knew she was right. From this moment on, the path of his life, and perhaps the fate of many more, had turned towards something he could not yet see. The moon sank lower, the night stretched longer. But in that quiet room, a fragile bond was born, a bond strong enough to challenge fear, and perhaps even the hatred of a world. Whispers in the village morning came with the cry of crows. The farmer rose early, as he always did, but today his steps felt heavier. Syrah and her children were still inside, the little ones curled close together on the straw mat, their breathing steady at last. For the first time in many nights, they slept without fear. But the farmer knew peace was fragile, and outside these walls, danger was already moving. The village was small, spread along the edge of the fields, where gossip traveled faster than wind. When the farmer walked down to the well to draw water, he felt eyes on him. Old women stood in clusters, whispering into their shawls. Men leaned on their tools, their talk cutting off when he passed. It was not new for him. He had been an outsider since his wife's death. But today, the stares felt sharper, more curious, more suspicious. Brogan, a broad man with arms like tree trunks, called out to him. You were out late last night, Brogan said, his voice casual but his eyes narrow. What keeps you up in the dark, friend? Wolves or something else? The farmer forced his face to remain calm. Nothing but the wind, he answered, pulling the rope of the well with steady hands. Brogan smirked, as if he did not believe it, but let the words hang without reply. As the farmer turned away, he caught the sound of hushed voices behind him. They say strangers walk the roads again, one man muttered. Not human ones. Another whispered. Spotted near the fields. The words pricked at his skin like thorns. Had someone seen Syrah? Or was it only rumor? Rumors were dangerous enough, for in this place, whispers had the power to turn into flames. When he returned home, his steps were quick, his jaw tight. Inside, Syrah was awake, feeding her children a small loaf of bread he had given. She looked up, noticing his unease. What happened? She asked quietly. The farmer shut the door, his voice sharp but low. People are talking. They're sniffing the air. They'll come looking soon if we're not careful. Syrah's hands stilled, her eyes heavy with fear. I told you, we bring only trouble, she said, her voice trembling. Perhaps we should go before it grows worse. But the farmer shook his head, his voice firm. Go where? Out there. You'll be hunted down before night. Better here than dead on the road. His words silenced her. but the weight of truth pressed on them both. That evening, as the farmer worked the fields, he saw Brogan again, standing too long at the edge of the land. Brogan's eyes searched the farmhouse. His face twisted in thought. The farmer's hand tightened on his spade. It was only a matter of time before suspicion turned to accusation. An accusation here meant violence. Later that night, when the fields were wrapped in shadows, the farmer lit no lamp. Inside the darkened room, he spoke low to Sirah. "They will come sooner than we think. If they find you, they won't listen. They won't care about your story or your children. They'll only see you as monsters." Sirah's hands clenched, her voice steady, but filled with sorrow. "I know how your kind sees us," she whispered. "I've seen their hatred. I've felt their stones, but I will not let them harm my little ones. I would rather die first." Her fierce words struck the farmer deep. For a moment, he saw his wife again, standing strong even in sickness, refusing to let despair claim her. He looked at Sirah now and saw not only an alien mother, but a mirror of the strength he once loved. Perhaps that was what frightened him most. A sudden knock broke the silence. Both of them froze. The children startled awake, their eyes wide with terror. The farmer's heart thundered, his hand instinctively reaching for the old rifle by the wall. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by Brogan's voice. "Farmer, are you in there? We've questions for you." The farmer's breath came sharp. He turned to Sirah, his voice urgent. "Take the children, hide in the cellar now." She did not argue, gathering them quickly and rushing to the trapdoor beneath the rug. The farmer pulled it shut, just as another knock thundered against the wood. He opened the door a crack, keeping his body square in the frame. Brogan stood there, with two other men behind him, lanterns in their hands casting long, accusing shadows. "What do you want at this hour?" the farmer asked, his voice rough but steady. Brogan leaned forward, his smile thin. "We've heard things, farmer. Strange things on the roads last night. Thought maybe you, living out here alone, might have seen something." The farmer's mind raced, his body shielding the room. "I saw nothing but fields and wind," he said flatly. Brogan's eyes narrowed, his lantern light flickering across the walls behind him. For a moment, silence stretched, heavy as iron. Then Brogan chuckled low. "Strange how quiet you keep these days," he muttered. "We'll be watching, friend." When they finally turned away, the farmer shut the door with a slow hand. In the darkness, he exhaled, sweat cold on his brow. From beneath the floorboards, he heard the faint breaths of Sirah and her children. Silent as stone, he knew then the danger was no longer distant. The village had begun to whisper, and whispers in time always became fire. The night of betrayal. The farmer worked harder than usual the next day, but no labor could shake the unease pressing on his chest. He felt it in the way the villagers' eyes lingered too long, in the silence that followed whenever he passed. Whispers had turned into something heavier, something sharp. The air itself carried suspicion. Inside the farmhouse, Sirah stayed hidden, the children confined to the cellar during the day. They did not complain, but the farmer could see the toll it took on them. Their small faces grew pale in the dark, their laughter stilled, their voices hushed to whispers. It was no way for children to live, yet it was safer than the hatred waiting outside. By nightfall, the farmer's unease sharpened into certainty. Something was coming. He could feel it like the shift of wind before a storm. He loaded the rifle and set it against the wall, his eyes heavy, but his body restless. Sirah watched him from the shadows, her voice soft. "You do not sleep anymore," she whispered. He gave no answer, only tightened his jaw. The betrayal came not from strangers, but from someone he once called neighbor. Eldrick, a thin man with eyes too eager for coin, had seen something the night before, perhaps a glimpse of Sirah at the window, perhaps only the shadow of her children's shapes. It did not matter, for in the village, even suspicion was enough to sell. Eldrick carried his whispers straight to the patrolmen. their ears hungry for excuses to tighten their grip. That evening, the farmer was mending a fence when he saw lanterns glowing far down the road. Too many for travelers, too steady for villagers. His blood ran cold. The patrol was coming. He rushed back to the farmhouse. Throwing open the door, Sarah rose at once, sensing the danger before he even spoke. "They're coming," he said, his voice tight. Her hands gathered the children close, their eyes wide. "Where can we go?" she asked, her voice trembling. The farmer's mind raced. The cellar would not hold against patrolmen. The woods were too far, the fields too open. There was no true hiding place. Not anymore. "They know," he said grimly. Someone told them. The words were bitter, heavy and final. Sarah's face fell, but her eyes hardened with resolve. "I will not let them take my children," she said, her voice fierce. The farmer gripped her arm, his voice rough. "You don't understand these men. They won't just take, they'll destroy." For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Two souls bound by the same desperate truth. They were out of time. The pounding of boots grew louder on the dirt road. Voices calling commands. The children whimpered. Sarah hushed them, her arms like shields. The farmer grabbed the rifle, checking the chamber with steady hands. His heart thundered, but his grip was sure. This land had taught him one thing. If you did not fight for what was yours, others would take it without mercy. Lantern lights spilled across the farmhouse walls, shadows of armed men looming long and jagged. A fist hammered against the door. "Open in the name of the patrol!" A voice barked, cold and sharp. The farmer did not move, his jaw locked tight. Another strike shook the wood. Behind him, Sarah's voice came, low and steady. "If we must fall tonight, then let us fall fighting." The farmer glanced back at her, at the fire in her alien eyes, and for the first time since his wife's passing, he felt he was not alone. He gave a short nod. "Stay low. Keep them quiet," he told her, then stepped toward the door, rifle in hand. The wood splintered as the patrol forced their way in. 4 men entered, armor glinting in the lantern light, swords and muskets ready. The leader's eyes swept the room, cold and sharp. "We know you hide them, farmer," he said, his voice filled with cruel certainty. "Give them up, or burn with them." The farmer stood firm, the rifle aimed steady. "You'll find nothing here but my land," he growled. The leader sneered, signaling the others to spread out. Their boots creaked against the floorboards, their hands ready to tear through every hiding place. One man's foot pressed against the rug that covered the cellar door. The farmer's breath caught before he could move. Sarah stepped forward from the shadows, her children still hidden behind her. Her voice rang out, clear and strong. "Enough," she said, her presence fierce despite her thin frame. The patrolman froze for a heartbeat, startled by the sight of her. The leader's lips curled into a cruel smile. "There she is," he muttered. The prize, in that instant. The farmer pulled the trigger. The rifle roared like thunder, the sound tearing through the farmhouse walls. One patrolman fell back, his chest shattered. The others shouted in shock. The children screamed. The air filled with smoke and fire. And the night of betrayal turned into a night of blood. Fire and steel. The gunshot echoed across the fields, like a storm breaking the sky. The patrolman staggered back, one already lying dead in a pool of his own blood. For a moment, there was silence, the kind of silence that comes before the true chaos. Then fire and steel filled the farmhouse. The second patrolman shouted, raising his musket, but the farmer was faster. He ducked behind the table, the wood splintering as a shot ripped through it. Smoke choked the air, the smell of powder burning sharp in his nose. The farmer slammed another round into his rifle, his hands steady, despite the storm inside his chest. Sarah moved like a shadow, pulling her children into the far corner, shielding them with her body. Her eyes glowed faintly in the lantern light, her voice low and fierce, as she whispered words of comfort. The children clung to her, trembling, but they made no sound. They had lived through fear before, and they knew silence was survival. The leader of the patrol snarled, sword drawn, his face twisted in rage. "You dare raise arms against the king's law," he shouted. The farmer rose from behind the broken table. His rifle aimed. "This is my house, my land," he growled, "and no law will take it." The shot cracked. The leader staggered back, blood blooming across his shoulder. But he did not fall. His fury only deepened. Steel rang as one of the soldiers rushed forward with a bayonet. The farmer swung the rifle like a club, the wood cracking against the soldier's jaw. The man fell with a howl, teeth scattering across the floor. Another patrolman charged, blade gleaming. This time Sarah moved. Snatching up a fallen poker from the fire, her strike was swift and merciless, the hot iron smashing against the man's arm. He screamed, dropping his weapon, the flesh seared and smoking. The farmhouse had become a battleground. Lanterns fell, flames licking at the wooden floors. Smoke thickened, shadows twisted across the walls. The farmer reloaded, his breath heavy, sweat pouring down his brow, but his eyes burned with something more powerful than fear, a fire that had not lived in him for years. The leader, wounded but unbroken, barked orders. "Kill the alien, take the brats alive, leave the farmer for the crows." His men hesitated, shaken by the fury of their enemies, but greed and cruelty drove them forward. They lunged again, steel flashing, boots pounding. The farmer met them head-on, rifle booming in the small space. One more man fell, chest torn wide open. The last patrolman swung his blade, grazing the farmer's arm, blood dripping down his sleeve. But the farmer's fist drove into his face, the crack of bone sharp in the smoky air. The soldier crashed to the floor, unmoving. For a heartbeat, only the leader remained, his sword raised, blood running down his side. He stared at the farmer and Sarah, his eyes burning with hatred. "You'll hang for this," he spat. "Both of you, and your cursed spawn." But before he could strike, Sarah stepped forward, the poker still glowing. Her voice rang like steel. "No, you will not harm them." The leader swung, but the farmer's rifle came up, blocking the strike. The steel screeching against the wood, Sarah drove the poker forward, the hot iron sinking deep into his chest. His scream tore through the farmhouse, his body convulsing before he collapsed in the spreading fire. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of flames and the sound of ragged breathing. The children sobbed softly now, but they were alive. The farmer leaned against the wall, his arm bleeding, his chest heaving. He looked at Sarah, who stood tall despite her trembling hands. Her eyes met his, fierce and unyielding. That night had changed her, and it had changed him too. The farmhouse burned brighter, the flames threatening to consume all. The farmer grabbed what he could, pulling Sarah and the children toward the back door. They stumbled into the night, the cold air cutting against their smoke-filled lungs. Behind them, the house roared, fire rising high into the sky. It was no longer a home. It was a pyre, a warning, a mark upon the land. The farmer looked at the blaze, his heart heavy. Everything he had built, everything he had guarded for years, gone in a single night. But as he looked down at Sarah and the children, alive and clinging to one another, he knew the fire had not taken everything. In the ashes of his old life, something new had been born. The night of fire and steel had ended, but its echoes would not fade. The patrol would not forgive this. The village would not ignore it. The farmer had crossed a line that could never be undone. And now, with Sarah and her children at his side, he was bound to a future filled with enemies, dangers, and choices that would shape them all. The road ahead. The farmhouse was gone, burned to ash. The flames had eaten the roof, the walls, the table where the farmer once broke bread. Now only smoke and embers rose into the cold night, drifting toward the stars like ghosts. The farmer stood with Sarah and her children at the edge of the field, watching the last of his old life vanish. The children huddled close to their mother, their eyes wide with fear and wonder. They had lost everything before, yet this night felt different. They had not only survived, they had fought. They had seen their mother strike with fire, and they had seen the human farmer stand like iron. In their hearts, a strange seed of hope began to grow. Sierra's voice was quiet, heavy with sorrow, but edged with strength. "You cannot stay here," she whispered. "The patrol will send more men, stronger men, and they will not stop." The farmer nodded, his jaw tight, his arm still bleeding, but his spirit unbroken. He looked at the road beyond the fields, a ribbon of dirt and shadow stretching toward the horizon. It was the only path left to them. They gathered what little they could: a satchel of dried bread, a water flask, a blanket torn from the ruins. The children carried nothing but each other's hands. As they walked away from the smoking ruins, the night pressed heavy upon them. But every step carried them further from death, and closer to whatever waited ahead. The stars shone clear above, brighter than the fire they had left behind. Sierra tilted her face upward, her eyes shimmering with memories of another sky, another world. She whispered something in her own tongue, soft and melodic, a prayer or perhaps a farewell. The farmer listened, though he did not understand. For the first time, he realized that the woman beside him carried not only children and scars, but an entire lost world inside her. The road was long, winding through forests and hills. Each sound in the dark made the children tense. Each shadow could hide a soldier or a thief. But the farmer walked with his rifle ready, every step steady, his eyes scanning. He had once lived only for his land, his crops, his simple meals. Now he lived for them. At dawn they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Smoke rose from distant chimneys. The outline of a town lay below. The farmer paused, weighing choices heavy as iron. The town meant safety, food, maybe allies. But it also meant eyes watching, whispers spreading, danger lurking. If the patrol's men reached the town before them, they could all be caught. Sierra touched his arm, her gaze firm. "Whatever happens," she said, "we face it together." Her words carried no fear, only resolve. The farmer nodded, surprised at the fire in her. In a single night, she had changed from a weary mother begging for bread to a warrior standing unbowed, and in her strength he found his own. They entered the valley, the children holding close. The town was waking, doors opening, smoke curling from ovens, voices calling out. Every face turned as the farmer and the alien woman walked through the muddy street. Some eyes were filled with suspicion, others with curiosity. Whispers spread, sharp as knives in the air. Who is she? Why are there alien children here? Why does the farmer bleed like a hunted man? The farmer ignored them, his hand firm on the rifle. He walked straight toward the tavern, the place where news and rumors met. If they were to survive, he needed to know what the patrol planned. Inside, the air was thick with ale and smoke, voices low and wary. The room fell silent as he entered with Sierra at his side. The barkeep frowned, setting down his mug. "You bring trouble with you, farmer," he muttered. The farmer's voice was calm but iron. "Trouble already came, and it burned my home to the ground." He looked around the room, meeting every eye. "The patrol will come again, not only for me, but for any who shelter me, and for her kind too." Gasps rippled through the crowd, fear mixing with anger. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then an old man in the corner rose slowly, leaning on his cane, his voice cracked but steady. "Long ago, men like us stood against kings and soldiers. We stood for what was right, not what was commanded." He looked at Sierra, then at the farmer. "Maybe it's time we remembered how." The room stirred, murmurs rising. Some still turned away, unwilling to risk their lives, but others nodded, fists clenched, eyes burning. The spark had caught, small but alive. The farmer glanced at Sierra, For the first time, he felt they were not alone. The road ahead was dangerous, filled with enemies, hunger, betrayal. But it was also filled with allies waiting to be found, with battles worth fighting, with hope that refused to die. That night by the fire, the children curled close. Sira sat beside the farmer, her voice soft. "You saved us. Though you lost everything," she said. The farmer shook his head, staring at the flames. "No," he whispered. "I found something worth more than land." The stars wheeled above. Silent witnesses. The world had changed for them, and they had changed for the world. The road ahead stretched long and uncertain, but they would walk it together, and together they would not fall.